Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video we are going to be looking at the new Urban Decay Naked Wild West palette. I got this in the mail, complimentary of Influenster, to test out, and I was so excited when I got this in the mail. So we're going to be doing 3 looks with this one palette, and we're going to be doing swatches and a review of the palette, at least a first impressions of the palette. So that's what we are going to be doing today. If you are new here, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my videos, and let's get started. So first of all, I am obsessed with the packaging. I love the snakeskin, so let's see what the palette looks like. Here is the palette. It has the same snakeskin design on here. It is gorgeous. And this is actually my first plastic Naked palette. At least the newer ones. I only have the original Naked palette. That's the only Naked palette I own in my collection. So it was awesome when I got the notification that I was getting this. And when I saw this on Treadmood, when she posted it that this was launching, I got really excited, and this was definitely going to go on my wish list. So I'm so happy I got it. So let's look at the inside of the palette. It comes with a double-ended brush as usual, but I think this is a little bit different than normal, or I just haven't gotten a palette in a long time, so I don't know what the brush looks like anymore. And then here is the palette. It is so pretty. I love the pops of color in here. So it is mostly a neutral palette like the other Naked palettes. It does have the pops of color with the teal here and then the shimmery teal, but then it has a few rusty tones, so it's not super neutral, but it's neutral enough so you can get really neutral looks from this if you just take out the blues of the palette. I personally love teal, so I love that those were included in this palette. So overall, the color story in here is right up my alley. I love this. I don't wear super neutral toned eyeshadows very often because I love wearing colors on my eyes. So this type of palette is great because if I want to do an everyday neutral look, I can. But if I want to add those colors, then I also can with the rusts and the blues. So this is like my perfect palette. So let's start with the swatches. So there are the swatches of the palette. So from my left to right is the whole palette. I really like all of these tones, as I've mentioned. The mattes don't swatch as well, but I think they perform beautifully on the eyes, and the shimmers swatch nicely, but they're a little bit more hardly pressed than I would prefer, but that's just from swatching. On the eyes, I don't really get that, but we'll get into that. But those are all the swatches of the palette. So like I said, I did 3 looks with this palette. This is actually the 3rd look. So we're going to go through the tutorials for all 3 looks so you can see what I did. I did one really neutral palette, I did one kind of mix, and then I did this teal toned look. So let's get into the 3 looks. First, I'm taking the shade Standoff, which is the lightest shade in the palette, and I'm just using that to run it all over my lid. So my lid and all the way up to my brow bone, I'm just using this as a light base because this is pretty much the same color as my skin tone. Then I'm going in the next shade Spur, and I am adding that to my crease. I'm going pretty light with it, but I'm kind of putting it everywhere in the crease. I'm not being too precise, but I am building it up a lot. It is a very light color, so you do have to build it up just a little bit. And then I'm going in with Nudie, which is a little more brown toned, and I'm just putting that a little bit lower in the crease, so not as high. And this one also takes a little bit building because it is a very light shade. So I am starting to tap it on and then blend it to see if I can get that pigment that way. So I am building it a little bit more up into my crease. Then I'm going in with Ghost Town, which is the rusty color in the palette. And then I am just tapping it on my outer corner, and then I am just running it slightly into my crease. So this one is definitely more pigmented than the other shades. So I want to be a little bit more careful with this. So I'm just tapping it, and I'm actually going pretty light with it. So then I'm able to build it up, and I think it did build up very nicely. You can really see that rust color on there. And I think it did blend really nicely too. So I'm just going to be blending this color into my crease along with the other two colors that I already placed down. And then I am taking the shade Whiskey, which is the brown shade, and I am just tapping that in my outer corner. So I don't really want to go too far onto my lid. I just want to place this in my outer corner to deepen it up, and then I'm going to run this on my lower lash line. It's really hard to do this on camera to make sure you can actually see it. And then I'm taking a Ghost Town and I'm also running that under my lash line. So I'm going to try to put it a little bit lower than Whiskey, but it's a little bit hard to tell. And then I dragged it a little bit up onto my outer corner, so I pulled it out a bit. And then I'm taking the shade Nudie and I'm just doing the same thing under my lash line. Then I'm taking the shade Hold'em, which is the gold shimmer in the palette, and I'm just putting that all over my lid where the shadow isn't. This is a pretty glittery shadow, so it didn't come up on my lid super shimmery. So keep that in mind, it's not going to be super intense. I did go in with my finger and I didn't wet it at all. I thought about going in with a brush and wetting it, but I just decided not to. I just kept using my finger. And then I also went in with Rustler, which is the rusty toned shimmer, and I kind of put that on my outer corner in between the gold and then the brown on the outside. And I love this shade so much. It is such a pretty rusty bronzy tone and it's gorgeous. It's super shimmery. And then I just went in to blend the Hold'em shade and Rustler together. I went back into Whiskey and I'm just adding that into the outer corner just to deepen it up a bit. And then I am taking Hold'em again and I am putting that in my inner corner, and it is pretty glittery, so you don't really get that crazy shimmer, but I still think it looked really good. And then I'm just taking a brown liner and running it on my waterline, and that is the finished look 1. For look 2, I'm starting with Standoff again, and I'm putting this all over my lid as another base. I think this is just a perfect shade for that. And then I'm taking Laredo, which is the purpley gray taupey shade. I love this shade so much. I think this is a unique shade, so you are going to get so many different looks with this shade. It's a very cool toned shade, so if you don't like cool tones, then this might not be the best shade for you, but I love it. So I just went in multiple times with that to build it up. And then I'm also pulling it into my inner corner. I am going to start a halo, so I took a smaller brush and I am just adding this shade to the inner and outer corner of my lids to kind of build up that halo. And then I am building up the shade to just get it a little bit darker. Like I said, I am very light-handed, so I kind of need to build up a lot. And then I am taking Tex, which is the dark teal tone shade, and I am putting this right next to the gray shade on my lid. So this is going to go further into the middle of my eye for the halo. And then I am going to put it in my crease just below the gray again. So this is just going to be the same shape as the gray, just all a little bit lower. So this one I did go very light again, so this one takes a little bit of building up because I wanted to be super careful with applying. I didn't want to put too much and then not be able to blend, so I did end up building this up a lot. So you will see me add this. This is like the third time of adding this color, and I do it probably a couple more times just to get the color payoff I want. And I don't think that's the shade really, it's just how I apply the eyeshadow. I barely touched the pan, so I can't really fault the shade for it. I just wanted to be really careful. And then I went in with Pony Up, which is the dark gray in here, and then I kind of put that in between the Laredo and Tex shades. This, I want it to be somewhat of a gradient between the gray and the teal shades. So it has the lighter gray, darker gray, and then the teal shades. And then I'm going in with Bud, which is the teal shimmer, and I'm putting that right on the center of my eye for the halo. So this one is also not very intense, but I did go in with my finger. I didn't use a brush and I didn't wet it or anything, so this is just how it looks with your finger. And I went back into Tex, and I'm just building this up next to the shimmer shade in case I pulled off any of that color when I added the shimmer. And that color is so gorgeous. When you build it up, it's such a nice teal shade. And then I'm doing the same thing with Pony Up. So I'm just adding this color back in case I blended it out just a bit when I was doing the shimmer or any other blending. And then I'm going in with Cowboy Rick, which is the silvery taupey shimmer, and I'm just adding that right to the center of my lid, and then I'm also putting that in my inner corner. Onto the lower lash line, I am putting Tex all over my lower lash line as the teal shade. Again, I really love this shade, but I'm trying to be really careful and not poke myself in the eye or even be able to see anything. And then I went with Laredo, and I'm just putting that underneath the teal shade. And then I'm going in with a teal eyeliner, and that is look 2. And with mascara, here are both looks. So that is the look 1, which is the neutral bronzy toned look, which I think turned out really, really nicely. It is still pretty subtle. And then there is look 2. So again, that one's actually pretty subtle too, because I didn't go too intense with the teal shades, but those are both looks, and I think they turned out really, really nicely. For the final look, shocking, I'm starting with Standoff again as just my base, and this time I am doing both eyes for this look. And then I'm starting with Laredo in my crease. So I'm just going to run that in my crease and just a little bit higher. I started with a smaller brush, but I decided to go in with a bigger brush just so it can go a little bit more into the crease and not be so precise. So this is just a fluffier brush. I built this up just a little bit, and then I went in with Pony Up, which is the darker gray, and I am just putting that in my outer corner, and then I'm also going to run that in my crease. So I just wanted to put this below Laredo to get that darker toned gray to show up, and it's just beautiful. I love gray shades, so these two were one of my favorites in the palette. I just think they apply beautifully. So I'm just building that up a little bit more just to get that darker gray tone. And then I am taking Tex with a flat shader brush, and I'm just adding that all over my lid. So I went really light-handed with this because I didn't want to go too crazy. So I did a couple layers of this just to get the color payoff I wanted. So this is the first layer. It's a little bit light. I don't think it's patchy at all. I think it's just how I was applying it. So when I put that second layer, quote-unquote layer, because I, again, barely touched it, it really covers up the patches that were there in the first layer. So if you really take a lot of the shadow on your brush, I think you're really going to get a quick and easy look, and the color payoff is going to be amazing. But if you go light-handed like me, it just takes a few layers to build up. Then I'm taking Pony Up, and I'm just deepening up the crease and the outer corner, and I'm just really blending the teal shade and the gray shade together. Then I'm taking Cowboy Rick, and I'm putting that in my inner corner, and I am also kind of pulling it to the center of my lid. This one is pretty glittery, so it doesn't come off as well over this color, so I did have to add a second layer, and then you can see that the silver really shines through at that time, but you can definitely see the glitter. So I just wanted to pull this into the center of my lid just to kind of get that silver shade. And then I also put this in my inner corner, and then I wanted to run this into my crease just a little bit just to get that silver tone. So I just pulled it up slightly. I think there's barely any color on the brush, but that's what I wanted to do. And then I took Bud for my lower lash line, and I just ran that all over my lash line. Since it is a shimmer shade, I didn't really want to pull it and blend it, so I kind of just tapped this all over my lower lash line to really get that shimmer tone. And then I used a teal liner for my lower lash line, and then I went in with mascara, and that is the final look. I think it turned out really, really nicely. I love teal toned shades, so I think this looks really pretty. I love how it blended. I think it turned out really, really nicely. I love this look. Okay, so first impressions, I really like this palette. Again, I really only have the Naked palette, the original Naked palette in my collection, so I can't really compare this much to any of the formulas, but First of all, let's talk about the brush. I actually used this brush, I think in my first 2 looks, if not just my first. I already can't remember, but I actually really like this brush. It did a really great job of blending, so I will definitely be using this brush. I don't really use a lot of the brushes that come in palettes, this or the Anastasia palettes. I don't really use those brushes. I don't really know why, I just don't, but this is actually a really good brush, so I can see myself using this a lot more in the future when I use this palette. Now let's get into the shadows. So like I said, they are a little bit more hard pressed, but I can't really compare this to any other Naked palette. I have the original, but it's just hard to compare formulas. So I don't know if that is how most of the Naked palettes are for the matte shades, but it didn't really bother me that much on the eyes. They're a little bit powdery, but they're not too bad. The 2 light shades, or lighter, this is very light. So this is very light. I use this all over my lid just as a base. And then these 2 shades, these didn't come off as much. So if you're my skin tone, they might not really show up on your eyes, but I did build them up a little bit and they did show up fine enough for me, but just keep that in mind. I actually really like the rest of the mattes in here. This one is just a beautiful taupe shade, and then I love all of the rest of the mattes. I think they performed really beautifully. I think they blended really nicely. I mean, this look, I used the 2 darker shades in the palette, the dark teal and then the gray. I think they blended really nicely and seamlessly, so that's all you can really ask for with the mattes. And then the shimmers, they were not as intense as I thought they were going to be, but I still really like them. The Cowboy Rick shade, the silver one, that one's very glittery, so decent amount of fallout. I did put that on my inner corners in this 3rd look, so I did wet it and it made it a little bit better, but you still get that glitter fallout, so also keep that in mind. I think the teal shade is so pretty, but it's just not as intense as I thought it was going to be. I mean, when you swatch it, it is very smooth and it does feel really good when you're swatching. I'm just going to swatch all of the shimmers all so they're next to each other. So in the swatch, it looks very smooth and it looks like it would be pretty metallic, but on the eyes, not so much. This one is pretty metallic on the eyes. I really loved how that looked. And then this one is a little bit more glittery. Similar to this one, it is kind of more glitter than shimmer. So they're not my super favorites. I have other formulas that I definitely like better, but I don't think they're terrible. I still think they look really pretty on the eyes. I mean, that silver now, I think looks really nice with that teal on my eyes, but it's definitely not shimmery. It's glittery. It's a slight grayish, like purple undertone with glitters in there. The other ones, like I said, are more shimmers, but that teal one is definitely the lightest of all of them, but I still really like them. So overall, I really like this palette. I, again, am so excited that I was able to get this and test this out for you guys. It is actually available now. It was available yesterday on Sephora and Urban Decay's website. So if you are looking for a new palette, if you like the neutral tones with the pops of color, then this is a great palette for you. So I definitely recommend picking this up. Again, I can't really compare it to any of the other palettes, so I don't know if this formula compares, if it's better or it's not as good. I don't know, but I personally really like this palette, so it is a win for me. And I just wanted to say thank you to Urban Decay and Influenster for sending me this palette to review. I'm just ecstatic and super grateful that I was able to test this out. And I actually like this look the best of the ones that I did. I did do the neutral one, which I liked, but it wasn't super intense. Like that gold was not super shimmery. I would have preferred it to be super intense. And then that teal halo I liked. I think I liked it better in real life than it did pull off on the camera. So keep that in mind also. But that teal shade in the middle was just not as intense as I would have hoped for that type of look. But I still think it looked amazing. But I just love this look right now. I love dark teal tones. I almost kept it as just the dark teal all over the lid, but I decided to go in with that silver shimmer because why not? But I really love how it turned out. Let me know in the comments if you do plan on picking this up or if you are passing on it. Let me know if you have any of these Naked palettes in your collection, if they compared to that or whatnot, but let me know. I would love to have a discussion with you in the comments. And just want to mention my giveaway again that is going on for another week. It is closing February 16th, so that is next Tuesday. So if you have not entered my giveaway, go do so. I will put the video in the description box below so you can check it out and enter the giveaway. A bunch of goodies from TJ Maxx and Marshalls that you could win, so go enter my giveaway. But that completes this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.